So I finally had a chance to get the kayak out on the water. I was so excited. I was like, I had these visions in my head of like, this is going to be an epic day, right? Let me tell you, it was an absolute disaster. Disaster.
Brought the GoPro.
It's moving into the wind pretty nicely. Really no complaints there.
Let me tell you why. Originally I thought, you know what, I'm just going to take the kayak out to a local lake and just get it in the water and just get the feel for it. I wasn't even going to do a video. And I'm like, no, like I really should share my first experience in the Hobie Outback, right? I said, well, if I'm going to do that and if I'm going to go fishing, I might as well go to a lake where I can probably catch some decent fish. So I headed out to a local lake that's known for big crappie, big bass. And I'm thinking, okay, let's get out on this lake. I've never fished it from any kind of boat. Maybe we can catch some really nice fish. So the first thing is I get out there and there are, it felt like 23 boats that I could see just from the kayak launch, right? This is the shallow end of the lake. I was a little shocked. I'm out there on a Wednesday afternoon. I figured, okay, maybe nobody will be there. It wasn't a really nice day, but it was nice. And there were just boats everywhere. So that was number one. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a nightmare. The second thing is I went to go put my over-the-shoulder camera into the holder and it just didn't work. It was way too high. The angle would have been like shooting almost like 45 degrees down, so you wouldn't be able to see. It was just wrong. So I'm like, okay, well that sucks. Of course, they didn't have the actual kayak launch docks in place, so I had to launch off of a rocky slope. Apparently, I don't have footage of that either, and so that brings me to the next big part of the failure. It was just incredible, all of the pieces of footage that didn't get saved. And this wasn't a GoPro problem. This wasn't an Insta360 problem. This was a cell phone problem. I use my Pixel, and usually it does a really good job, but for some reason, none of the clips that I filmed, so the intro, the on the water sort of talking head stuff like this, the outro, none of that is anywhere. I don't know what happened. That's actually created a delay in even getting this video out. And then the next big thing was, once I started getting out on the water, the wind was just whipping out on that lake. I don't know how strong it was, but it was really strong. To the point where a lot of the audio clips when I'm out on the main lake are unusable, even with a good microphone with a wind filter on it. I can't use them.
Primarily just to...
And then the camera, the 360 that didn't have an external mic, I mean, it's just garbage. That's eventually what led to me doing this video this way. So let me talk about the Outback, because the horrible day of fishing and the first trip being such a painful experience in some ways had nothing to do with the kayak. It was phenomenal. The turning is fantastic. When you turn the rudder, I mean, you can really move very quickly. I was actually really surprised how shallow that section of the lake was. I knew it was shallow, but it was so shallow that the fins on the Hobie were actually kicking up. In fact, in a couple of the clips, you can see sort of like the wake of mud that I was leaving behind me just as I was pedaling through. There were all of those little challenges. And then not to mention, like, once I got out on the water, dealing with the wind and everything, I look up and I feel like I have to run this blockade, back in the Revolutionary or Civil War times. There was just this line of boats across the entire lake. I couldn't figure out, like, okay, where do I go that I don't go through where somebody's fishing? Like, it would be a little aggravating. But so I just gradually sort of meandered away and got the feel for the kayak. Made it past the sea of boats, because granted, people are all fishing there because obviously the bass are starting to stage in that spot, but that's not the kind of fishing I like to do. I almost consider that combat fishing. Now, it was cool because I saw that my first guy, like, sort of doing the video game fishing with the live scope and stuff, I saw the first one of those in person that I've ever seen. I'm not quite sure how fun it looks, but I'm sure if he caught a lot of fish, it would be a lot of fun. But it really seemed like he was just studying the screen, trying to figure out where he was going to cast, trying to figure out which fish he was going to try to target. It's kind of cool in a way, and at some point I'm going to give that a try somehow. but it felt a little weird, and I don't know if that's why all the boats were sort of gathered around those. It looked like there were two guys that had that kind of equipment. I don't know if everybody else was there. I was like, oh, if they're there, then there must be fish here. I'm not sure what the deal was. After that, again, the kayak was great, but now I'm on this huge lake that I've never been on, and my first goal was I wanted to fish this one stretch where whenever I fish it from the bank, I can't get to it. So I'm like, well, I want to fish that. I threw everything I could think of, and I wasn't having any luck. So I said, well, if they're already moving up shallow on that end for spawning, maybe there's other fish up in the coves and stuff like that. Then I started exploring around a little bit. I did manage to catch one small bass on a spinnerbait in a cove, and so here's that. I think we got our first fish. It's not very big though. He is a fish. He is a fish. It's fairly cold too, but we got one, so that's a start. And then like another hour and a half went by. I'm like, I'm just going to start heading in. The wind was intermittent. It wasn't horrible, especially when I could get off of the sort of the center of the lake. That wait from buying the kayak in January to finally getting out on the water in April, I think I'd built up all of these expectations. And it's like getting out on the kayak wasn't the magic bullet to be able to catch a ton of fish. I mean, I'd even taken a can of Athletic Brewing beer with me to sort of celebrate when I caught that first big fish off the kayak. It just didn't work up, so finally I gave up. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to crack it open before it gets completely warm. I was hoping to have this after I caught like a really nice fish, but as I was heading back in, I started thinking like, okay, what has been my strategy, for smallmouth, and let's apply that to some of the largemouth fishing. Assuming that not all of the fish are up on beds and they're not all shallow, I started then working that same bank that I originally wanted to fish, and I just started working parallel to the bank, trying to figure out like at what depth maybe some of the fish are, and I managed to start getting some bites, and the fishing got a little bit better. Show you a few catches from there. There's another bite. Oh, hey, got off right there at the end. Well, there's another one. That's how it goes. All in all, it was a successful first trip. Like I worked through the ideas of, how do I load it? How do I unload it? How do I pack it, land it? How does it maneuver? I got the first trial in with some of the cameras, and I think I'm probably going to continue to wear the chest cam, at least until I really get the audio and the camera angles dialed in from one of the other cameras. Oh, and in hindsight, I'm sort of glad that I didn't go to that lake where it's just like, well, let's just get the kayak in, because I was able to test out a lot of these other things. I was able to figure out, like, you know, I didn't take a ton of gear with me, but still, I know that one of my first things that I want to figure out is rod storage. And I'm probably looking at some sort of horizontal storage off to one side or the other. Still trying to figure that out. Probably be on the right side. And then honestly, I can see me getting some sort of cooler as well. So whether it's a Yeti or one of the new Pelicans or something like that, I can probably see me getting a cooler for those longer days when I'm out there, you know, keep my beverages cool, keep maybe food or snacks cool too. I'm not sure about like a kayak crate yet. I don't feel like that's going to be a huge thing for me, but we'll see. The rod storage is probably a key thing, probably a rod holder or two, just so that as I'm doing some just moving around, I control a little bit better. I don't love the way the rod holders are in the Hobie for trolling, and be able to get to them real easy, and to have them at the angle where I would want them to be able to have the right action for when a fish hits. So I may add 1 or 2 rod holders. Other than that, it was a good first trip. And I will say this, kayak fishing is a skill. It's just like anything else. You know, when you first start wading streams, maybe you're not all that effective. When you first start fishing with a bait caster, you know, maybe when you first start fishing in general, you don't know what to do. When you first start using certain types of artificial baits, you know, think of me with crankbaits. There's some videos coming. I'm starting to get them figured out. But they have baffled me. Like I've never really caught fish on crankbaits. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to focus on getting my kayak fishing video making, you know, my kayak fishing filmography. I'm going to continue to work on getting that better, hopefully through the early part of this year, so that, you know, through the summer and fall, the videos are a lot better than this one and some of the first ones coming up. Because it's just trying to get all these little pieces figured out. You know, now you have 4 or 5 different cameras that you're editing together, at least the way I want to do it. You know, there's just a lot of little pieces. So I will do a lot of kayak fishing this year, but I'm still going to do some of my stream wading. And in fact, a lot of the places that I want to try to kayak fish are fairly remote, skinny water areas. And so I've already had one where I got there and there's just really fishing from a kayak is not practical. I traveled 45 minutes to get here, most of it on roads that I've never been on before. And what I thought I was running into was a much deeper creek, because I've fished a lot of this creek before, but never this section. And this is a kayak launch, but it's basically not even deep enough to get a kayak through there without dragging it. So I ended up fishing from the bank. So as the weather warms up, I'll be in the mindset to be prepared to just go wade fishing. And so I do still want to have a balance. It's not going to be all kayak fishing, but I got to tell you, the kayak fishing has been a lot of fun. It's been cool to get to sections of bodies of water that I've never been able to reach before. And honestly, there's just this relaxing feeling of being on the water. All of those problems that I mentioned in this video, it was just sort of a perfect storm. And it created a little bit of delay, because for me, it's like you need to have a map for the video to figure out where you're going. One of the challenges, you never know what's going to happen when you get out on the water. But when something like this happens, I'm like, okay, well, what is the story behind this at this point? And so I've tried to edit this video 3 or 4 times, and I just haven't been able to make much progress, because it's like getting in the car and not knowing where you want to drive, and you're just going to randomly drive around. You're probably not going to get anywhere. You might get lucky and find something, right? Something cool, but odds are you're just going to waste gas and waste your time. And in this case, I didn't want to put out a video that wasted everybody else's time. So if you watched to this point, leave a like and a comment below. Let me know, you know, how, in my mind, sort of changing and pivoting and telling a different story with this first kayak fishing trip. I wanted it to be this epic fish catching adventure. But really what it's come down to is just, it's the realities of trying something new, and sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want. But you got to keep doing it. But again, it was a great experience. I have fun. Like, I can't wait to get out on the kayak. I'm trying to get out twice a week minimum right now. And it's the weather has been up and down and cold, and I'm taking my time, trying to be safe with it, trying to just really get the feel for the Outback before I start doing anything crazy and really, you know, pushing myself a little bit. And I want the weather and the water to be a little bit warmer before I start pushing and standing up and doing all these other crazy things. So, you know, that's sort of how this video turned out. And again, leave a comment below. I appreciate everybody's support, and a lot more content coming up soon. I've got a ton of videos filmed, and now that this one's out of the way, maybe I can make a little bit of progress and get stuff out a little bit faster. You know, because this time last year I was gearing up to essentially do 5 videos a week. Granted, they weren't quite as involved as what I do these days, but I still want to get back to doing 2, 3, 4 videos a week, in addition to all the shorts and the lives that I do. So again, thanks a ton. I'll see you next time, and good luck out there on the water.
So the fact I managed to catch a few fish is just a bonus.
Yeah.
Let's see, pull the rudder up.